You know, when Tehran Times write a piece about you and say there is a guy in Croatia who is seriously oppressed by the government, then you realize you are in some serious trouble. So, this is me. I'm not longer under arrest. I'll explain it a little bit later. I have started blogging in 2004 on my own blog called Marko.org. And later on I said, you know, politics is something too serious to be left to the politicians, so we have to do something. And I've created a site called politica.com, which is a community quite similar to Daily Kos in the US, but it's open for both the left and the right side at the same time. It's currently the largest politically oriented community in Croatia. And when you discount the registered bloggers, the government, the parliament, the Croatian Secret Service, they are within our top 10 users. So if you want to send a message to them, then go to Politica and write something. But writing is not only enough. We can talk about it, but we have to do something real. And it all started in Copenhagen in 2007. I was giving a lecture on a stage like this to the political consultants, and I showed them this slide, and they started laughing. And I asked, well, what's so funny? And they said, you know, that there is more voters than citizens in your country. And, you know, it never occurred to me that this is something illogical, because it's quite normal in Croatia. And I said, you know, we are on our way to EU. And by the time we join EU, we fully expect to harmonize all our laws with EU legislative, including the laws of mathematics and physics. So we are going to solve this quite soon. I'm happy to report that now we have more than 2 million internet users, so this number has changed in the meantime. And, you know, this is a Google map of the city of Vrgorac. City of Vrgorac is a very small city. It's like 8,000 people. Of course, there is 12,000 voters. You expected that info. And somewhere in the map, around the third E65 mark on the map, there is even smaller. It's not exactly even a village. It's, you know, sub-village called Dusine. And something strange happened in Dusine because they have way too much voters there. You know, in these villages, and these villages on the border of Croatia and Bosnia, you know, for the last 500 years who lived there. So you don't have any misunderstanding. You know, there is a neighbor I never heard of before, so it didn't happen. And I said at one point in time, you know, if I had a voters list, I could calculate where the voters fraud is happening in Croatia. And I wrote it on a blog. And a few months later, I received 2 CDs with a full voters list of all citizens eligible to vote in Croatia and outside. And you know, when we talk about data transparency, there was a possibility for me to simply zip it up and, you know, send it on a website, but it wouldn't mean much. Instead, I wrote an application where you can type the name of your city or the name of your street if the city is bigger, and it will list you up to 100 addresses in order of number of voters registered on particular address. And it turned out there is a skyscraper in Dusine, and nobody saw it before. You know, there are 404 of them on number 0, which is also unlisted, and 34 on number 999. You know, there is not so many buildings in Dusine. We would notice them by now. So the thing was that we have created this website, and suddenly, you know, I was always saying, you know, we always have to think about the greed and jealousy and, you know, neighbors speaking on each other. So this was a very good idea, because everyone was checking his neighbors, you know, how many people are registered in that apartment, because, you know, the water bill is based on the number of people or something similar. So suddenly, plenty of places in Croatia cropped up with illogical number of voters. As I said to a few people before, in Vrgorac, you have 12,000 voters, 8,000 citizens, so they have to come from somewhere. In their hospital, they have 150 childs per year, newborn childs. And at the same time, they have about 60 of them in the first class in primary school. So 90 of them are missing by the time they are eligible for primary school. So basically, this website, how should I say it? You know, no single drop is responsible for the flood, but I'm happy to say that my drop was the last one before the dam broke. And as a result, I'm happy to say the Croatian government was forced to change the constitution in order to amend possibility of people registering in two places. And they're also now changing the laws which regulate place of residence. So although the voter fraud problem is well known in Croatia, we don't talk about it anymore. It's solved. You know, everybody knows what is happening, how it's happening, and where it's happening. It's just a question of political will to resolve that so that we will have, hopefully, in 2011, fair elections with no people voting twice. And now we go to the reason I was arrested. So I'm not going to tell you that I did it because the police want to talk to that guy, and there is a 10 years prison sentence for that. So consider it as a case study. You know, the site is quite similar if you look. And I mean, if you asked me who did it, I would say, you know, ask Marko, because he's the suspect #1 in Croatia for things like this. He's like specialized for stuff like this. So just like with voters, we have way too many war veterans. You know, we had about 300,000 of them during the Homeland War from 1990 to 1995. And it turns out that now we have 550,000 of them. And I said, with that kind of army, we would be in Moscow by now. And the problem is that the Croatian government spends about 1 billion euros per year on all kinds of benefits for war veterans. If you're a war veteran, the time you spent in the army is counted twice in your work life. You get a pension, your children can go to the university without exam. You have an opportunity occasionally to buy a car and don't pay taxes or import duty on it. So it's a huge problem. And everybody knows, you know, like in a Leonard Cohen song, you know, the game was fixed. And the government, the ruling party, is basically paying off its voter base with inflating the number of war veterans. So this is highly disputed issue. It's very hard for you to understand how disputed it is, but I can tell you that when I was arrested because of it, you know, daily newspapers, they print special editions when the Pope comes and when the President dies. I got 2 special editions. You know, there is evening news which lasts 30 minutes, you know, including weather and sports, and I was like first 20 minutes of it. So my brand recognition in Croatia is 98%, similar to Coca-Cola and, I don't know, Olympics. And basically what this website showed, and you know, that's Tomislav Ivic, he's a minister of war veterans, that there are about 292 days in his war record which nobody can really explain how that happened. You know, nobody saw him there. So he was in some kind of trouble, but he's also in the ruling party, so they say, no, this is a problem. I don't know, people don't remember him or something. So we today, just like with voters list, we don't talk about war veterans anymore. It's an issue which is resolved. It's just a question of political will to resolve it fully and to delete 150 plus thousands of people from that list, and hopefully to save some money for something more noble. And I would say that what I did, and organization I've made in the meantime, because when I went to a conference like this and they tell me, we want to help, and what's our organization so we can provide you some help or hopefully some money. And I said, there's no organization involved, it's just hit and run. It's just a very small number of me and my friends, and we are picking the issue which is painful, and we are trying to present it in a most painful possible way, especially for the government, and expose it at the best possible time. So the media will pick it up and they will just slaughter everybody in the way. So I wanted to say that if you have correct idea, the right idea, and you know what you are doing, or at least you think you know what you are doing, then you can make a lot of significant change like I did. Currently, I'm working on 2 projects. This one, this is a map of San Francisco political landscape, and I want to do the similar thing for corruption in Croatia. I'm trying to get a lot of data from the government, and they're a little bit reluctant to talk to me. They say, from 4.5 million Croats, you are 4 million, half a million, and first, which is going to get it. And the second thought of theirs was, well, maybe he already has the database and just wants to avoid the arrest thing like the last time. So I believe that if we do it correctly, and I'm really working hard on it, we'll be able to map a corruption network in Croatia in a way which will be more productive than the anti-corruption police in the last 15 years. I'm almost certain of it. That's the one thing we do. And the other thing we do is we have a huge problem with the media in Croatia, and I guess you have media problems as well. But in our case, we are 4.5 million people country, and there are some people, some events, some companies about which you simply cannot write. Because if you try to write, you are either going to get fired or your magazine is going to be without any ads in the future. So people are simply not talking about some issues. And one of the things I want to do, I want to create an online newspaper which will be called Windmill, the Don Quixote and Sancho Panza thing. And we want to make partially crowdsource, partially citizen journalism, partially professional journalism site, which will be able to draw at least 30 to 50,000 people per day on that site, and create good information for the people who are actual opinion makers and decision makers in Croatia. So that would be all from me, and we might even have time for some questions.
Thank you, Marko. Yes, let's have some very quick time. We have 5 minutes. We are a few minutes behind, but it would be a shame. And since Marko didn't use his whole 20 minutes, I would love to invite, and I know our volunteers helping with the mics maybe. Are you ready? Does anybody have a question for Marko? I just want to, before anyone raises their hands, just to clarify very quickly. So the veterans, somebody put a database up of all the people who are now on the veterans list.
Yes.
And since that happened, has there been any reform? Have they done anything to reduce the numbers?
No. I've spent I was arrested for 8.5 hours. I mean, the pressure was enormous. When they arrested me, there were like 200 journalists in front of the police stations, plus hundreds of people coming saying, I was the one who published they flooded, the policemen, they were like crazy.
Wow.
So they were forced to let me go at midnight that day when they arrested me, but I again had to go to the police for 10 more days for 8 to 12 hours of examining my equipment, because they went to my office and my home and they seized all data carrying things, including my Kindle and my ADSL router. So they had to examine it all. So I mean, it was basically what the government did is that they wanted to shift attention from the content of that list to the form. So they said, he's going to die for it and he's the one. So, but the issue is closed now. Everybody knows who is on the list. They can check, the list is accurate, and it's just a question of political will to resolve it. So it's not.
Is there an opposition forming? Is this helping to,
yes,
bring down the ruling
they're
party?
so incapable.
Yeah.
I said yesterday, I am outraged by the previous government. I'm unhappy about this one, and I'm going to be deeply disappointed by the next one. But
right. I think I heard you say that you're going to cut a little from the left and a little from the right and a little from the left and from the right, and then the whole thing. Maybe
no, I said, there in Japan you have things called death with 1,000 cuts. So I try to cut them a little bit from each side and every single day. So we are specialized in hit and run operations, and hopefully they are going to fall down at one point in time.
Quick question. Yes, over there. Please just make it quick because we're squeezed for time.
Do you also have a project to improve the quality of politicians?
Sorry?
Do you also have a project to improve the quality of politicians?
Well, Croatia is a very young democracy. We are only 20 years old, and, like a field in England, you have to water it for 500 years until you have the right quality of grass. So at this point in time, I just want to remove some subjects from public life which are creating havoc and problems and so on. So if we resolve the problem of voters list, if we resolve the problem of war veterans, we are going to strip the subjects on which they draw their power from. So inevitably there will come a time when we will have better politicians in power, and I'm trying my own thing to do to help it happen quicker.